Showtime! Welcome to Show Me Some Television, the segment where I binge watch television programs thanks to Roger's Show Me service, and then I tell you all about it, let you know if it's something you should probably be checking out. This time we are talking about the second season of The Last Man on Earth, and essentially will be the last season I catch because there are only 2 seasons on Show Me, and well, it's Show Me's not continuing on. But I do believe that the show has continued on. I believe it's at least in a 3rd, if not a 4th season, so hey, there is that going on. Now, I will say that if you haven't seen season 1, there are going to be spoilers in this, which will directly affect possibly your enjoyment of the first season. So I suggest not watching this video, checking out my thoughts on the first season, and if that at all floats your boat, check out the first season, then come back here and see if season 2 is at all worthwhile. Now, that being said, spoilers, here we go. Now, the first season ended off with essentially our last man on Earth, Mr. Phil Miller, being what would you call it? Exiled, and his wife Carol Pilbazian, going with him, choosing him over the studly and crazy talented other Phil Miller. So obviously the show starts off with them elsewhere, and they're traveling around and it's very much similar to the first episode of the first season. They're doing crazy things, I think at one point they're driving a stealth bomber through the streets of some city. It's stuff like that, right? So you have that going on. And then eventually, Carol is really feeling like, she misses the group and such. But of course, Phil he knows he's not welcome back. So eventually he caves in, and, as one would expect, we get Phil and Carol back with the group. And, it's sort of back to normal. We get some standard antics going on there. Now, there are some changes going on here, but I won't give that away simply because it would interfere with your enjoyment of season 2 if you haven't seen it yet. So one of the big things that is a change for season 2 is Phil has a brother, Mike Miller, who's an astronaut who happens to be on the space station by himself when this plague goes off. So a good portion of the first half of the season involves little snippets with him being up on the space station and how he's sort of dealing with the fact that he is now possibly the only he is the last man on Earth, though he's not on Earth, he's in space. But you get my drift. And then I didn't even mention it, he is played by Jason Sudeikis, who from like Saturday Night Live and Horrible Bosses and We're the Millers, oddly enough. Funny how that worked out, eh? I wonder if that was how he pitched himself to get into the show. Hello, I'm already a Miller. Here we go. I don't know. But eventually, not that this is really spoilerific, he's eventually going to make it down to Earth. But, of course, he, being an astronaut and such, ends up splashing down in the middle of the ocean somewhere, I'm guessing, or a gulf or something. But, and I was kind of expecting a lot of him dealing with, trying to get around that way, but they just sort of cut to the chase, and boom, he finds a boat which is occupied by a crazy man who has survived the plague by staying away from land. Essentially, the plague started happening. He just got on a boat and went out to sea, and that's how he's been living. He gets into a bio suit and goes on land whenever he needs supplies, and then he comes back out. So they meet up, and there's a little bit of between those two. And this dude is played by Mark Boone Jr., who you'll know him to see him, but most recently his absolutely brilliant role for him, Sons of Anarchy, was his big thing there, as Bobby, Robert Munson, super main character in that show. But he plays a very, looks the same. Obviously, he's got the beard and all this, but very different in terms of kind of character. In this case, a little nutsy, right? So those are the two big additions in terms of cast this time around. Again, we get more stuff with regards to procreating and relationships and just, obviously Phil Miller, Tandy, we'll call him Tandy, so, distinguish him from Phil Miller. Tandy does his regular weird stuff now. There's also, oddly enough, I think it's one episode, Will Ferrell has a little cameo in this season, and I think he's Gail's love interest. I guess it's when Tandy and Carol come back to the group. This Will Ferrell's character has already sort of infiltrated the group, and Gail has sort of hooked up with him. But, like I said, he's only in one episode, so you can only imagine what craziness happens there. But it was interesting to see him in the show. But yeah, it was a lot of the same of what was in the first season. Just general wacky, completely, I guess, unrealistic way of thinking. It's excuse me. It's funny that Tandy, when he was by himself, was just whatever and doing all this kind of stuff. But as the group sort of came together, everybody sort of took on jobs and roles and was, doing stuff. But in season 2, most of the people seem to have let that go, and Phil Miller's character seems to have taken up essentially, he is probably the most handy, knowledgeable, and skilled person with regards to anything that would be going on in this type of scenario. But he really is the person who is almost, I'll put made in quotation marks, simply because nobody else seems to be willing to lift a finger, and he seems to just, he does all the work out of necessity. And you can only imagine that this kind of grates on him, and eventually it develops some kind of a friction amongst the group. So yeah, it's interesting. I think the introduction of Tandy's brother into the group, and just having the sort of like a sibling rivalry type thing going on, was quite nice. I actually quite enjoyed that, and I thought Jason Sudeikis was really, really good at playing that character. He just nails it, right? Like he seems like the brother. He has the nuances of somebody who's family. and yet he is his own person, and it's not just you know, I don't know. It's just, you know, he's the smarter, not the older brother. Tandy's technically the older brother, but you know, Mike Miller is the character who is the brother who succeeded, right? He is the successful brother, but he is the younger brother. So there's a lot of family thing going on in this season, which is quite nice. But it's a lot of the same that you saw in the first season. So if you enjoyed the first season, you'll probably enjoy the second season. In general, I mean, I would say that, you know what, it's odd. I wouldn't say there's as many crazy, outrageous things like there was in the first season. There was a lot more outrageous things happening in the first season than there is in the second season. But that doesn't mean there isn't anything. No, you know, there are moments here and there. You know, probably each episode has at least one where something's just that's completely out there. But it's, on the whole, I think season 2 deals more with the relationships between people and the dynamics of the group. So if that seems to float your boat and you enjoyed season 1, carry on into season 2. There's no reason to hold back. If you're kind of iffy on season 1, season 2 is not really, I don't think it's really going to bring anything that'll change your mind. But yeah, all your favorite characters have returned, and yeah, well, you have to watch the season to see where they go if you're at all interested. So there you go. That is The Last Man on Earth, season 2 for Show Me Some Television. Till next video, take care. Have a good one.